What is going on, you guys? I am here in my studio that I have relocated to Hi-Fi Studios, and then built up a bunch of gear around it compared to what I had at home. But a lot of you guys have been asking for a studio tour and what all of this stuff does. So I thought I'd do that for you guys because I love you and you guys want to see it for some reason. So starting from the left to the right, I guess we could go, right? So from the left to the right, we'll go this way, okay? So this wall is not done yet. It's gonna look like that wall, but we're trying to mount those to the wall. So forgive the incompleteness, but it's gonna look really dope when it's done. But the equipment shouldn't change, at least for now. First things first, we got the Moog Sub37 Tribute Edition. This was the first analog synthesizer I ever bought, and I bought it, I think it's almost 2 years ago now. The oscillators are not a digital sample, they are actually voltage controlled. Basically how synthesizers work, you start with the oscillators and then moves into the mixer, and then it goes through your filter. On the Sub37 it's a low pass filter, and then it goes through your filter envelopes and your amplification envelopes. This is where you get your attack, decay, sustain, and release. I know it sounds like I know what I'm talking about, but I'm a novice at what I'm talking about right now, and sound design is like something I'm learning. So I've always been a preset hoarder, so I like to take a preset that I like the way it sounds and modify it the way I like. But starting from scratch, the Moog has been basically helping me learn that feat. Next up, the Korg Triton LE. This is the first keyboard that I added to the collection, and I bought it 15 years ago. This was the first really big piece of equipment I ever bought. Back then I was running Fruity Loops 3 on a Windows 98 computer. Maybe it was Windows ME at the time, but I hadn't even bought my first Mac yet. My cousin Zaya ended up gifting me one for like a mere $500, and it looked exactly like my Mac Pro there, but it was called the Power Mac G5 from 2004, and it basically got me going on Logic, and I still use Logic today, but we'll get to that later. Moving right along to the right, first thing that you'll notice is this guy. This is the Prophet Rev 2, short for Revision 2, made by Dave Smith Instruments. They were the guys that came up with the Prophet, and they had their company called Sequential back in the day, and they recently got the name back from Roland, but this was before that, so therefore it's still called Dave Smith Instruments on this one. This one is awesome. It's also an analog synthesizer, just like the Moog. The only difference is that the oscillators are digitally controlled versus voltage controlled. So the difference between those is that it's a little more precise in tuning and also timing, like when you're syncing up your LFOs with like a MIDI clock and things like that. But it's really cool when you're making things that need to be more precise. The Moog, what's awesome about it is that because it's voltage controlled, it could also over time become out of tune like a guitar, which is dope because it gives its own character. That means you can buy multiple different synthesizers of the same model, but no two will sound exactly alike. It's really awesome, just like a guitar. The wear and tear, the age of the wood, all of that attributes to the character of your actual guitar and the way it sounds. These are all preamps. Preamps are basically what your microphone or source goes through before it goes out to your computer. In my case, like we record with a computer on this. This was my first, then I bought these, and then we had the Avalon. So the first one is the Focusrite Trackmaster Pro. They don't make it anymore. This one I use when I want something a little bit beefier sounding than what's built into my Motu, because the Motus are really clean. This can dirty up the sound a bit in a good way. And normally I use it for guitars because you can just plug right in there. And I barely use it these days because ever since I got the Avalon and even the Summit Audio, I really love this Summit Audio. So there's no tube in the Focusrite Trackmaster Pro. So I ended up upgrading to the Summit Audio 2BA221. That's the preamp portion, and it's working in conjunction with this tube leveler, which is like a mini replica of something called an LA2A. The LA2A is iconic, and a lot of people use it for leveling vocals, exactly what you would think that it does based on its name. But all those peaks that you would get from singing, it kind of squashes them down and makes it sound very smooth. And I think it still sounds fantastic. I've been using it a bunch to use with my Blue microphone because it pairs up really nicely. And the cool thing about it, for all of you geeks, a lot of what I'm going to talk about in this video is very geeky, so bear with me. Hopefully you're actually interested in this stuff. But right here, mic impedance, it's something that's pretty cool because every microphone has its own impedance, and this lets you adjust the preamp to that so you actually get the microphone's natural sound, and it was really dope. I still love that preamp, even though obviously I'm gushing over the new toy. This one's the Avalon VT737 SP. It's pretty much anybody who's anybody uses this preamp, which I'm super stoked to have in the studio now. So you can either plug in with a microphone in the back, or you can plug an instrument in on the front, and it runs through its own compression, its own EQ, and then it sends it out to your audio interface. Such a cool piece of gear. Love it so much. Next up, we're gonna go through the monitors. These guys are what I started out with. The older iteration is what I started out with 13 years ago. I bought the first set of BX8s. This is called the BX8 Carbon Edition. And basically those things served me so incredibly well for like 9 years until the left side of it just like stopped working. And then at the time I was super broke, was still working at Best Buy, and I needed to keep making music. So I ended up buying the Carbons to replace the original because I didn't have any money. The pair was like, including like damage protection and tax, was like $700. So, and these guys were still my main speakers up until a couple months ago, when Matt got me the Focals. These guys are my personal ones from home. Been using them for years, and I know their sound, but oh my lord, these guys sound amazing. So I saw these at NAMM last year, and I like had to have them, and I was saving up for them, and basically High Five asked me like, so what do you need? And I was like, can I get these? And they were like, yeah, totally. So they got me a pair of these Focal shaped twins. And the cool thing about them is that even though you see these two smaller woofers, they have the same surface area as one 8-inch woofer, but because they're separated into two 5-inch woofers, they sound cleaner. Like there's far better separation in the lows and the mids. So there's 3 amplifiers in this thing, one to amplify the tweeter, one to amplify the mid-range, and one to amplify the low end. And then they have these 8-inch resonators on the side. They actually don't have any power to them. All they do is basically vibrate and create those sub frequencies that we're used to hearing. Yeah, but the cool thing is, I don't know if you guys noticed, the cones, like the actual centers of them, are inverted, as if like somebody went up to the speaker and just pop them in. See that? And the reason for that is I could basically play these speakers and walk around anywhere in the studio and be able to hear relatively the same amount of sound. So the sweet spot is very broad on those speakers. I really like them. Matt kind of made fun of me for buying these back in the day, but they have come so useful. They're so important to my mixing process. These are called the Eventone Mix Cubes. They ran me roughly about $700 for the pair, but they're made to sound bad. They use the term bass challenged environments, but it's meant to simulate bad audio. Like playing off of a cell phone or like a bad car stereo or something like that. And the reason why it's so important is because when it comes time to level the mix, I use those, because if it doesn't sound good on those, that means it's not going to sound good anywhere. Because you can make things sound great on these big speakers, but then when you go to play them on littler speakers or like the TV or like somebody's car or somebody's cell phone or iPad, things kind of go out of whack and you're kind of like, well, that's not how it sounded in my studio. Well, you use these to get them sounding right here. It's more challenging to get it done here. And because it's challenging, you know for a fact that if you get it sounding good on these speakers, it's going to sound good pretty much anywhere. All right, moving right along, we've got the Clarity M by TC Electronic. What this guy does is basically it analyzes the music that you make on a technical level. So when I play music, turn this down. So it tells me how loud I'm getting in the mix, and it has a radar. So I have a target of like how loud I want to be, and it will tell me how close I am to that target. And then over here, it tells me if I'm phasing. The more to the right it goes, the better. If it goes to the left, that means I'm having phase issues. Mono deviation means if I were to play this song in mono, how much quieter would it get? And it's telling me it's about 1.5 decibels I'll lose. The cool thing about this thing too is it also does, it's called RTA mode. So it tells me where all of the frequencies are. If there's a frequency that bothers me in the scale, I can basically scroll to it and it'll tell me what frequency it is. So the bass just came in, as you can see. And then we have the V scope. So that's telling me on my stereo image, how does my my mix sound in the grand scheme of things. So when I'm making dance music, every time the kick hits, I like my kicks in the center. You'd see this line jump up right here, which is pretty cool. So in fact, I think I have one here. See that? Every time the kick hits, got this nice center line happening. So yeah. Then we have the Mackey Universal Control Pro, the MCU Pro. And then the extender for it. So it originally comes like this with 8 faders. I wanted 16 for coolness. Back then I was mixing Battle Universe and all the other channels here, and with the amount of tracks that happens with like sound effects and things like that, I needed more faders to play with because I was banking way too much, and ended up keeping it obviously because I love it. So the thing about this is that it basically controls what's happening on the screen. Well, I'm going to reset it because it didn't wake up properly. Ah yes, this is what it's supposed to look like. Yep, and everything's zeroed out. The way this thing works is if I were to take, let's say, audio 5 here, and audio 5 is there. When I move this fader, it's supposed to move it there. And if I hit solo, it solos. If I hit mute, it mutes. And I can select any track that I want. And that's that. So moving right along. Oh, let's talk about, I'm just kidding. We already talked about all 3 of these. Then we have the Roland SH101. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I bought that one and it wasn't the one that I wanted, but all the ones that I wanted were gone. So Roland reissued a lot of their most famous synthesizers in a emulated form. So this is the SH101 re-emulated, but I really wanted the Juno 106, gone. The JP 8000, that was gone, or it was the 8080 or something like that. That was gone. So it was either between this or the SCO2. Should have gone with the SCO2, I think, but the SH101's been pretty fun. I mean, it makes a lot of those really cool Prodigy sounds. Chemical Brothers, Crystal Method. I mean, if I made a bunch of breakbeat and industrial dance music, that would be cool. And then we have the Dangerous Music 2-Bus Plus. This is a analog summing mixer. So what that means, all fancy talk like and stuff, is that when you take the sum of all parts and you go to an output in software, that's called digital summing, which means the computer is doing all the summing for you. But what we've been doing here at High Five Studios is we have these outputs that go in to the 2-Bus Plus. The 2-Bus Plus sums it through its really fancy, warm, beautiful iron and gives it that analog sound, sums it, and then we send it back into the computer and it returns into the software. A lot of people argue, can't really hear the difference. I hear the difference. It's all about what's personal to you, I guess. You do you, boo boo, and all that stuff. And I enjoy it. And I think it's been making my mixes sound a hell of a lot better. But again, open to interpretation. This guy is basically the central command center to the entire studio. So here is where we select what we're hearing from the computer, what we're hearing from the 2-Bus Plus, and then this is really cool. This is USB. So back there's a USB port, and when I have guests and stuff come over for like engineering services, mastering services, things like that, they bring in their laptops, and usually they're like, hey Mike, let me play you something. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. I don't want to hear it off of your laptop speakers. Here, take this USB cable and plug it in. The cool thing about this thing is you don't have to install anything. You just plug it in and it has all the USB drivers built into the operating systems. It doesn't do anything fancy, so I could just play whatever I want from any computer I want through my speakers, and then it lets me select which speakers. So we've got the Focals, then we have the M Audios, and then we have the Evantones, and then we've got mono, if I want to reduce it down to mono, which I usually do with the Evantones, mute, or dim, like, hey cat, you're talking to me right now, but I can't really hear you, so I'm gonna dim it, even though I could just turn it down. I gotta put a button for that, I guess. Anyways, moving right along. These aren't gonna stay in this studio. They're gonna go into the writing room that we're building for Chill Records. That's the Native Instruments machine. That's the Native Instruments S49. It basically lets you control your contact library and select different sounds and things like that on it. I personally have an Akai MPK61. I really enjoy it, and it's in the pull-out over here, so that's what I use, and that's gonna go in the writing room. And then here I have some percussions. I have a darbuka from Meinl, some shakers. I think that's, oh, the capo is missing. Kat has my capo. Of course she does. And then I've got an Epiphone Les Paul traditional that I bought for myself. I've always wanted a Les Paul, and after I had some extra mulas, I bought me one. Then we've got the blue baby bottle microphone. I gave away my CAD Triton 6000. That was my first microphone that I bought for the studio. And then the piece de resistance, we have the Neumann U87 microphone, the best microphone I've ever used. It really is just phenomenal. And that's about, oh, my actual interface. Down here we have the Motu 896 MK3 and the Motu 8 Pre. So basically, I bought this one first. It sounds fantastic, and I ran out of inputs with all of this stuff. So I ran out of inputs, and I needed more. So what I ended up doing was I bought an 8 Pre, which basically takes analog inputs and it sends it through a digital optical cable through to the 896 and expands it from 8 inputs to 16 inputs. So I still have 6 more to go, or I think it's 5 more to go. But anyways, that's how everything ends up in the computer. All of this goes to this. If you guys enjoyed this video, let me know. Let me know if you guys want me to get into anything specific. I think it'd be kind of cool to do these kinds of tutorials or like consultations. But yeah, let me know if you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully this is what you guys wanted, and have a great day. Subscribe. I know I don't post a lot, but subscribe anyway. Okay, thanks. Love you. Bye.